I'm Bridget Carter, 38, and I had spent weeks planning this night at a fancy Boston restaurant, hoping to finally earn a bit of respect. I had made it big in tech, built an app that sold for millions, yet my family never saw me as enough. That night, I surprised them with first-class tickets to Hawaii, thinking it would bridge the gap. My sister smirked, tossing her ticket onto the table. "You're still trying to buy our love, aren't you?" she said, her voice dripping with scorn. My dad leaned back, chuckling. "No one here actually likes you," he added loud enough for nearby tables to turn. My mom just stared at her plate, silent as always. The words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. I smiled, nodded, and said, "Understood." Then I walked out, their laughter echoing behind me. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Good luck buying respect." That was the moment I decided they'd regret those words. A few weeks later, my phone was flooded with calls from them begging me to stop, but it was already too late. What about you? If you were in my shoes, would you forgive them or let them face the consequences? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know. Growing up in our Cape Cod home, I was always a shadow. My sister, 3 years older, was the star, vibrant, confident, the daughter my parents adored. I was Bridget, the quiet one, fading into the corners. My dad would light up at her report cards, her soccer trophies, her bold laugh. "That's my girl," he'd say, his voice warm. For me, he'd sigh, "You're too shy, Bridget," as if silence was a defect. My mom stayed quiet, her eyes on her book, letting his words settle over me. I learned early to keep my hopes small, to hide my spark so they wouldn't dim it. When I was 10, I built a model rocket for a science fair, spending nights perfecting every detail. It launched higher than any other, earning first place. I ran home clutching my ribbon, expecting a smile. At dinner, my dad didn't look up. "Wendy's speech won her a scholarship," he said, passing the bread. Wendy grinned. "Some people just aren't built for attention," she teased. My throat tightened, but I nodded, swallowing my pride. That night, I promised myself I'd show them one day, not with words, but with something undeniable. High school was the same story. Wendy led the debate team, her charisma filling our house. I found escape in the computer lab, teaching myself to code on clunky machines. My dad called it messing around, said it wouldn't lead anywhere. My mom asked if I was keeping up my grades. I coded anyway, late into the night, building apps, calendars, to-do lists that felt like my own world. By college, I was selling small apps, earning enough to pay my tuition. Wendy studied marketing, a real path, my dad said, clapping her back. I got a nod and a "don't overwork yourself." At 23, I launched my first big app, a task manager that exploded online. A tech giant bought it for $8 million. I called home, my voice shaky with excitement, hoping they'd finally see me. "That's nice," my dad said, then pivoted to Wendy's new role at a top ad firm. My mom mailed a card. No signature. Wendy didn't bother replying. I thought the money would shift their view, make them notice the woman I'd become. It didn't. They still saw the shy girl, not the one who'd built an empire from nothing. I moved to Boston, founded a tech startup, and launched another app, a productivity tool downloaded by millions. My name appeared in industry articles, and I spoke at tech summits. Strangers admired my work, but my family never asked about it. At Christmas dinners in Cape Cod, my dad quizzed Wendy about her ad campaigns, her corner office. My mom nodded, refilling glasses. I sat there, my achievements buried under their chatter. Once I mentioned a national tech award, Wendy laughed. "What for, geek stuff?" My dad chuckled, and my mom looked away. I stopped trying to share. The years stacked up, and so did their slights. Every visit home was a reminder. Wendy's life was the spotlight, mine an afterthought. Each milestone, a new app, a million users, was a quiet defiance against their doubts. But deep down, I still craved their approval, a sign they saw me. That's why I planned that grand gesture, those first-class tickets to Hawaii. I thought something big might finally make them look at me differently. That night at the Boston restaurant changed everything. I'd reserved a corner table at a harborside steakhouse, its velvet curtains and gleaming chandeliers setting a stage I thought would shift everything. For weeks, I'd poured my heart into planning this dinner, believing a grand gesture might finally win their respect. I'd spent $100,000 on first-class tickets to Hawaii, one for each of them nestled in embossed envelopes. I pictured my dad's rare nod of approval. "Maybe you've made it, Bridget." I imagined Wendy's usual smirk softening, my mom finally speaking up with pride. My hope was a fragile thread, but I clung to it. As the waiters set down plates of seared steak, I slid the envelopes across the table. "A surprise for you all," I said, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. Wendy, always quick, tore hers open, her eyes flicking over the ticket. Her lips curled into a sneer. "You're still trying to buy our love, aren't you?" she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the room's soft jazz. She tossed the ticket onto her untouched bread plate, the paper crinkling loudly. My dad leaned back, his chuckle harsh and deliberate. "No one here actually likes you," he said, his words booming, drawing stares from a couple at the next table. A server paused mid-step, her tray wobbling. My mom twisted her napkin into a knot, her eyes fixed on it, not a single word in my defense. Her silence stung worse than their mockery, a knife twisting in my gut. I sat there, my hands trembling under the table, my face burning. Their words weren't new, but in that moment, they felt heavier, sharper, like every slight from my childhood had crashed into this one night. I'd spent years building a tech empire, hoping they'd see me. I'd poured my heart into this dinner, into those tickets, thinking it might bridge the gap. Wendy's sneer grew wider, her fork tapping the table as she waited for my reaction. My dad sipped his wine, his eyes glinting with amusement as if my pain was a game. My mom's silence screamed louder than their words. Her refusal to meet my gaze, a betrayal I couldn't unsee. The room felt suffocating, the clink of glasses and murmurs of other diners fading into a dull roar. I forced a smile, my lips tight. "Understood," I said, my voice calm but cold as ice. I stood, my chair scraping the polished floor, the sound cutting through their laughter. Every eye in the room seemed to follow me as I walked out, my heels clicking against the hardwood, the harbor's salty breeze hitting my face outside. I didn't look back. I'd spent my life chasing their approval, bending over backward to prove I was enough. That night, something snapped. I wasn't the quiet girl they could dismiss anymore. I was done. The next morning, I sat in my Boston condo, the skyline glittering through the window, and made the call I'd been planning since I walked out of that restaurant. My lawyer answered on the first ring. "Sell the Cape Cod house," I told him, my voice steady. "Start tonight." It was my inheritance from my grandfather, the only thing I fully controlled. By morning, a developer had offered $2 million cash. No questions. The deal was sealed, the locks changed, and I felt a weight lift for the first time in years. 3 days later, my dad called, his voice shaking with rage. "What the hell did you do, Bridget?" he shouted. "That house was our family's legacy, and you sold it like a selfish brat." I held the phone away, his words echoing the same dismissal I'd heard all my life. I didn't respond, just hung up. Wendy's text came next, her words dripping with venom. "You betrayed the family selling Grandpa's house like that." I deleted it without replying. They thought they could guilt me into backing down, but I was done being their punching bag. The next morning, my mom showed up at my door, her coat buttoned tightly against the autumn chill. She sat on my couch, clutching her purse, her eyes avoiding mine. "We're hurt, Bridget," she said softly. "Why didn't you talk to us first?" Her voice was gentle, but there was no apology, no acknowledgement of the years she'd let me drown in their neglect. I waited for something more, a hint of regret, but she just sighed and left. Her visit stung, not because she came, but because she still wouldn't stand up for me. I needed someone who saw me, so I turned to my boyfriend, Eric, a tech colleague who'd always understood my drive. We met at a quiet cafe near my office. The hum of espresso machines filled the silence. I told him everything. The dinner, the tickets, the way my family tore me down. Eric listened, his eyes steady, never interrupting. When I finished, he leaned forward. "You've been carrying them financially for years, haven't you?" he said. I nodded, thinking of the family trust I'd funded for emergencies, college for Wendy's kids, medical bills for my parents. "It's time to cut them off," he said firmly. "They don't deserve you." Eric's words hit hard, but they made sense. Then he leaned closer, his voice low. "Have you checked the trust lately?" he asked. Wendy's been spending a lot. New car, vacations. It's worth looking into. I froze, my mind racing. I'd set up the trust years ago, pouring in millions from my app sales, trusting Wendy to manage it fairly. The idea that she might be misusing it felt like another betrayal, but it wasn't a surprise. Eric offered to pull the financial records, his tech skills perfect for digging into the details. "Let's find out what's really going on," he said, squeezing my hand. I left the cafe with a new clarity. Selling the house was just the start. My family thought they could keep me in their shadow, but I was ready to step into my own light. Eric's support gave me the strength to face what came next, whatever the trust revealed. 2 weeks later, Eric found something I couldn't believe. We sat in his Cambridge apartment, the hum of his laptop filling the silence as he pulled up financial records for the family trust. I'd poured millions into it over the years, thinking it would secure my parents' retirement and Wendy's kids' future. Eric's tech skills uncovered a trail of transactions that made my stomach turn. Wendy had siphoned off $500,000, funneling it into a startup that crashed within months. The project, some flashy app promising instant fame, was her pet idea, pitched to her ad firm's investors but rejected. She'd used my money to fund her gamble, leaving the trust nearly drained. I stared at the screen, my hands clenched. "She didn't even ask," I whispered. Eric nodded, his jaw tight. "She thought you'd never notice," he said. The betrayal stung, but it wasn't a surprise. Wendy had always acted entitled, as if my success was hers to claim. I trusted her to manage the trust, believing her marketing background meant she knew better. Now I saw her for what she was, an opportunist who'd exploited my generosity. I made a decision on the spot. "I'm done," I told Eric. He squeezed my shoulder. "Let's make it official." I called my lawyer the next day, instructing her to transfer the remaining trust balance, barely $1 million, to a Massachusetts charity for foster children. It felt right, redirecting my money to kids who needed it, not a sister who'd squandered it. The paperwork was finalized in a week. Every cent legally moved. I didn't tell my family. They'd find out soon enough. Word of Wendy's financial missteps spread fast. A Boston business journal ran a story hinting at an investigation into her firm's dealings. Her startup failure was public now, her name tied to reckless investments. Colleagues whispered about her over lunches, her reputation in the ad world crumbling. I didn't start the investigation, but I didn't stop it either. She built her castle on my money, and now it was collapsing. I felt no guilt, only a grim satisfaction. She'd mocked me for years, called me a traitor for selling the Cape Cod house. This was her reckoning. My dad called a week later, his voice thick with anger. "You're tearing this family apart, Bridget," he said. "First the house, now this charity nonsense. You're punishing us for nothing." I let the call go to voicemail, his words fading into static. I'd spent my life seeking his approval, but his accusations no longer held weight. I deleted the message, my heart lighter than it had been in years. My mom didn't call, her silence a familiar ache, but I was done chasing her validation. Wendy sent no messages, likely too busy scrambling to save her career. Eric and I met at my condo that evening, papers spread across the dining table. We started mapping out my financial future, determined to protect what I'd built. My apps had generated $8 million over the years, but I'd been careless, letting family obligations drain me. Eric suggested a new trust, one I'd control entirely, with no access for Wendy or my parents. "Lock it down," he said, his pen circling figures. "Offshore accounts, private investments, keep it out of their reach." I nodded, his pragmatism grounding me. We spent hours brainstorming, sketching out plans to diversify my assets, real estate in Boston, tech stocks, a small venture fund for local startups. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I wasn't just cutting ties with my family. I was building a fortress around my future. Eric's support was unwavering, his belief in me a stark contrast to the family who dismissed me. As we worked, I realized I'd spent years proving my worth to the wrong people. The trust transfer, Wendy's downfall, my dad's futile rage, it all confirmed what I'd known since that dinner. I didn't need their approval. I had my own. Fall brought more trouble than I expected. My dad hired a lawyer to sue me over the Cape Cod house, claiming I'd stolen a family asset. The lawsuit landed on my desk in a thick envelope, accusing me of breaching some vague familial duty. I wasn't worried. My grandfather's will, ironclad and notarized, named me as the sole owner. I met my lawyer in her downtown Boston office, the city's skyline sharp against the crisp autumn sky. She flipped through the documents, her pen tapping. "This is baseless," she said. "The house was yours to sell." The case dragged on for weeks, but the judge dismissed it in a single hearing. My dad's lawyer had no evidence, just bluster. I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of their desperation lifting with each step. Then came Wendy's next move. I was scrolling through my phone one evening when I saw her post on a public Boston community page. "Bridget Carter, the greedy sister who sold our family's legacy for profit," it read, painting me as a con artist who'd swindled our inheritance for personal gain. She tagged mutual acquaintances, ensuring the post spread like wildfire. By morning, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sent hesitant messages asking if it was true. Aunts and uncles stopped calling altogether, their silence louder than Wendy's lies. The accusation stung, each word a reminder of the family I'd tried to please for decades, but I didn't respond. I'd learned long ago that fighting her noise with mine would only fuel her fire. The financial investigation into Wendy, already underway, gained traction. Eric's contacts in the tech world had tipped off a local auditor who dug deeper into the family trust records. They found more than the $500,000 Wendy had funneled into her failed startup. She'd also diverted funds to cover personal expenses, luxury handbags, a leased BMW, even a vacation home rental in Nantucket. The evidence was damning, and a formal inquiry was launched by the state's Financial Oversight Board. Articles in Boston's business blogs began naming her, questioning her ethics. Her ad firm issued a statement distancing itself, and whispers of her resignation circulated. Wendy's carefully curated image as a savvy businesswoman was unraveling, and I didn't lift a finger to stop it. The extended family started asking questions. My cousin Laura called, her voice uneasy. "Is it true about Wendy's spending?" she asked. I kept my answers short, letting the truth speak for itself. Soon, aunts, uncles, and distant relatives began eyeing my dad and Wendy with suspicion. Family gatherings, once dominated by their charm, grew tense. My mom stayed silent as always, but I heard from Laura that she'd stopped defending Wendy at reunions. The family's unity, fragile to begin with, cracked under the weight of Wendy's deceit. I felt no satisfaction, only a dull ache for the bonds I'd once hoped to mend. The pain of Wendy's lies lingered, but I refused to engage. I met Eric at a harborside cafe, the water glinting under the late September sun. "She wants you to fight back," he said, stirring his coffee. "Don't give her the stage." His advice grounded me as always. Instead of posting rebuttals or calling cousins to explain, I focused on my next steps. My tech company was thriving, new contracts pouring in, and I'd started a foundation to fund STEM education for local kids. Wendy's rumors couldn't touch that. I was building something real, something mine. As we left the cafe, I felt lighter, the noise of her accusations fading against the strength I'd found within myself. One winter evening, an email changed my perspective. It came from my grandfather William's lawyer, a name I hadn't heard since settling his estate years ago. Attached was a scanned letter written, in his familiar slanted handwriting, dated weeks before his death. "Bridget," it began, "you've always had a fire in you. Don't let anyone dim it. Live for your values, not their expectations." He wrote of his pride in my drive, my independence, things my family never acknowledged. He urged me to carve my own path, to let go of those who couldn't see my worth. I sat at my desk, snow falling softly outside my Boston condo, tears blurring the words. William had seen me when no one else did. His words felt like a hand reaching through time, steadying me. Wendy's world was collapsing. The financial investigation, now public, exposed her misuse of over $500,000 from the family trust. Her failed startup was just the start. Auditors found payments for personal luxuries, from designer clothes to a yacht rental for a client party. Her ad firm dropped her, and major clients canceled contracts citing breached trust. A local news outlet ran a story on her downfall, linking her false social media claims about me to her financial misconduct. Her reputation in Boston's business scene, once her pride, lay in ruins. I didn't reach out. She built her empire on lies, and I watched it crumble from afar, feeling neither joy nor regret, only closure. My parents faced their own reckoning. The failed lawsuit over the Cape Cod house cost them thousands in legal fees, draining their savings. My dad's insistence on the suit, fueled by pride, backfired when cousins and aunts learned of his and Wendy's attempts to undermine me. Family gatherings grew cold toward them. Relatives whispered about their greed. My mom, always silent, lost the respect of her siblings, who saw her inaction as complicity. Their social standing, once a source of pride, faded as the extended family rallied around the truth. I heard from a cousin that they'd taken out a loan to cover expenses, their lifestyle no longer sustainable. I felt a pang of sadness, but it passed. Their choices weren't mine to carry. I'd started therapy that fall, meeting weekly with a counselor in a cozy Back Bay office. At first, I went to process the pain of Wendy's betrayal and my parents' rejection. But over time, I unraveled deeper truths. I'd spent decades chasing their approval, tying my worth to their validation. Session by session, I saw how their dismissal reflected their own flaws, not mine. My therapist's words stuck with me. You don't need their light to shine. I began to let go, not of them, but of the need to prove myself to them. My $8 million in assets, my tech empire, my foundation for kids, they were mine, built without their praise. William's letter sealed that truth. One snowy evening, Eric took me to a small cafe in the North End, its windows glowing with string lights. We'd spent months planning my financial future, securing my wealth in untouchable trusts and investments. That night felt different, though. He was quieter, his hand fidgeting in his pocket. As we sat by the window, snowflakes dancing outside, he slid a small box across the table. "Bridget," he said, his voice soft but steady. "You're my home. Will you marry me?" My heart raced, not from fear, but from a joy I hadn't known I could feel. I said, "Yes," my voice breaking, and he slipped a simple diamond ring onto my finger. The cafe's patrons clapped, their smiles warm, a stark contrast to the coldness of my family's dinner table. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not for my achievements, but for who I was. That moment marked a new beginning. William's words echoed in my mind as I looked at Eric, his eyes bright with love. I was done living for others' expectations. My family's downfall, their financial and social ruin, was their own making. I'd built a life that honored my values, strength, integrity, and purpose. As we left the cafe hand in hand, the weight of my past felt lighter than ever. I was ready for what came next, not as their daughter or sister, but as Bridget, whole and free. 1 year after that dinner, I stood in a white dress. The small Boston church glowed with candlelight, its wooden pews filled with friends and colleagues who'd become my chosen family. Eric waited at the altar, his smile steady, grounding me as I walked down the aisle. My dad, my mom, and Wendy weren't there. I hadn't invited them. The absence didn't ache as it once might have. I'd made peace with their silence, their absence, a choice I no longer questioned. The ceremony was simple, filled with laughter and vows that felt like promises to myself as much as to Eric. As we exchanged rings, I felt a quiet strength, a certainty that this was where I belonged. My parents had faded from my life. I heard through a cousin that my dad and mom were struggling, their finances crumbling under the weight of loans taken to cover the failed lawsuit. The extended family, once loyal to them, had turned away, their trust eroded by the truth of my dad's and Wendy's actions. Holiday gatherings no longer included them. Relatives chose distance over drama. I didn't reach out. Their world, built on pride and control, had collapsed, and I no longer felt the need to fix it. My mom's silence, once a wound, was now just a fact, like the winter chill outside the church. Wendy's fall was complete. The legal fallout from her financial misconduct led to a formal charge of embezzlement tied to the $500,000 she'd misused from the family trust. Her firm's collapse left her without clients, her name blacklisted in Boston's business circles. A court ordered her to repay what she could, but her savings were gone, spent on failed ventures and lavish purchases. She tried to rebuild her image with public apologies, but the damage was done. Her lies about me, exposed as desperation, only deepened her isolation. I read about her in a news brief, her face a ghost of a confident sister I'd once known. I felt no urge to confront her. Her consequences were her own. I'd poured my energy into something new, a foundation named after my grandfather, William, dedicated to helping young women in Massachusetts launch tech startups. The William Carter Fund had already awarded $1 million in grants, supporting coders and entrepreneurs who reminded me of my younger self. At the foundation's first gala, held in a Boston hotel ballroom, I watched a 20-year-old pitch her app to investors, her eyes bright with ambition. I saw William's legacy in her, not in the house I'd sold or the family I'd left behind. The work filled me with purpose, a reminder that my worth wasn't tied to those who dismissed me. Through it all, I'd learned a truth that changed everything. Self-respect is living for yourself, not for anyone's approval. My family's rejection, their accusations, their lies, they were mirrors of their own failures, not mine. I'd spent years trying to prove I was enough, but I didn't need their validation to know it. My success, my company, my foundation, my marriage, was mine, built on my terms. Therapy had helped me see that, and William's letter had sealed it. I carried that lesson with me, a quiet mantra that guided every step. Eric and I left the church hand in hand, stepping into the crisp evening air. Our new life stretched before us, free from the shadows of my past. I'd cut ties with my family completely, not out of anger, but out of clarity. They'd chosen their path, and I'd chosen mine. As we drove to the reception, laughter filling the car, I felt whole. Happiness wasn't something I had to earn. It was something I'd found by choosing myself.